Hello and welcome to the Casual Cinecast, powered by Cinelinx. My name is Chris.
My name is Justin.
And my name is Mike. Today's episode we'll be going over what's on our minds, and then we'll be moving into our review of the new film Searching, starring John Cho, which is the newest in the new genre Screen Life films. So that'll be interesting to talk about.
This is our first Screen Life film.
You're the first one I've seen.
So if you want to follow along with what we're watching next, you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Casual Cinecast.
Absolutely. You can send in any questions or thoughts or topics that you'd like us to discuss on the show. You could reach out to us.
Yeah, we also do all our polls on there, so when we do our Criterion choices, we have them all on there, so you can weigh in on what movie we're going to watch next.
And if you also want to send in questions in a more private, less social media manner, you can email us at casualcinemedia@gmail.com. And also, don't forget to give us a review on iTunes. You can give us a 5-star review, write us a review, let us know what you think of the show, what you like, what you don't like. Just make sure it's a 5-star review so we still look cool.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
It helps grow the show. It gives us feedback to make it all better. So really, it all just goes back towards making this a better experience for you.
Something else that you can do after you've rated us 5 stars is tell your friends about it. If you like what you hear, tell your friends, let them know that there's a good show here, and help grow the show and the community.
Thank you in advance.
All right. So, gentlemen, are we ready to move into what's on our minds?
Yep.
All right.
I sure am.
Let's do it. All right, Chris. I'm choosing you to go first.
Oh,
I know.
I feel very special.
Get ready.
All right.
What's on your mind?
Jack Ryan. I watched the new Amazon series this weekend, all 8 episodes.
Ah, the one starring Alec Baldwin, right?
Yeah. Wait, no, not that one.
Oh, I'm sorry, Harrison Ford, right?
The one with Chris Pine.
Oh, okay.
No,
the one
not
with
that
Ben
one
Affleck.
either. Which one was this one? I just watched it. I can't believe... Oh, John Krasinski. That dopey guy from The Office.
Oh, he's not that dopey.
I mean,
Well,
he's cooler than...
Nobody has a beard, at least.
He's cooler than
he doesn't have a beard in
Alec
Jack Ryan.
Baldwin, probably. What?
Yeah, he is definitely cooler than Alec Baldwin, for sure. He's very charming, actually, in this show. Well, we've gotten out of the way that John Krasinski is starring in this. It also has Wendell Pierce in it from The Wire. Have you guys seen The Wire?
Nope.
No.
Oh, man.
I know.
So
That's
good.
like
You
my
guys
biggest
should watch
shame when it comes to TV.
Yeah, and Wendell Pierce is really great in The Wire. And it's also a show, it's created by Carlton Cuse, who also helped with Lost.
All right.
I was actually really looking forward to this. I like John Krasinski a lot, and I used to read Tom Clancy books back when I was a kid. I watched the Alec Baldwin movies when I was a kid and the Harrison Ford movies.
Alec Baldwin was only in one of them.
Well, his movies. I like to pretend that all Alec Baldwin movies
Are Jack Ryan movies.
Are Jack Ryan movies, yes.
Beetlejuice, the weirdest
Yeah.
Jack Ryan film.
They really went off the deep end on that one. That said, I didn't like this series very much. Krasinski is really charming, but his character is really shallow and one-dimensional. The story feels a lot like stories from 24, which I enjoyed 24 at the time, but it's very coincidental. Like, things happen that are very coincidental, like happen to just Jack Ryan's friends, essentially. You know,
right,
like,
yeah.
Is there nobody else in the world besides Jack Ryan and his friends? It wasn't very good. It was very shallow. And there's one last point that I really want to say here, and that's it. That it's okay to have movies and TV shows that deal with terrorism and extremist Muslims. But the issue here is that it's not okay to deal with them in the way that this show does. The real-life issues of terrorism and Muslims and extreme Muslims are so complicated and so confusing that when you have an action show that just glosses over the issues in favor of action, and I think it's a danger to us, and I think it's fairly offensive, especially in our current political landscape. And I think that's the show's worst offense, because it doesn't deal with these things in an in-depth manner, like something like Zero Dark 30. It deals with them in such a way that's light and very action-oriented. And I don't mind action, but I think with these issues, we need to deal with all the ramifications of it, right?
Well,
that's how I feel about it.
I don't know. I haven't seen the show, but I am familiar with Tom Clancy. And it seems like anything with Tom Clancy's name on it is not going to be what you're describing. I mean, he appeals to like old white men who like to read about the military and like, people who like 24, you know what I mean? Like that's the kind of people, that's Tom Clancy's fan base, you know? I mean, he has some younger fans through video games and stuff. But if you go back and watch like Clear and Present Danger or Hunt for Red October, they're not the most nuanced things in the world.
Well, and that also comes down to when those things were written and when they were made.
Sure.
Was a very, very different time. And it was okay. Maybe it wasn't okay back then, but I felt like it was okay back then. It makes me miss Nazis because everybody can hate Nazis, you know.
Well, good thing for you is they're everywhere.
Yeah, they're all over the place now. So maybe I don't know, and I understand your point.
Yeah, and I'm not defending it really, but I'm just saying that's what I expected whenever this show was announced. You know, I expected something.
And I will say that they try very little to kind of alleviate that. Like Wendell Pierce is Muslim in the TV show, which it's just basically they're like, okay, we're going to put a bunch of Muslims in bad light, but we're going to have this one good Muslim, you know, and it just kind of it just rubs me the wrong way.
So outside of that, it's just not very, like, how's the action in it? Is it more actiony or more like espionage?
Well, it kind of goes all over the place. Like it starts off very action oriented, and then they go back to like Jack Ryan's all over the world traveling, and so the first 2 episodes are kind of continued and very action oriented. And the first episode actually has a really awesome fight scene in it, but that's the best fight scene is in the first episode. So it's not great, and the story's not great, and the characters don't have a lot of depth to them. So I never really feel attached to them, and it feels in service to the plot a lot of times when the characters do reveal things about themselves. Yeah, so I didn't really enjoy it very much.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a bummer.
Yeah.
It's already been renewed for season 2, though, so they're sinking a lot of money into this show.
Yeah, I mean, I remember seeing advertisements for this like 6 months ago and thinking, oh, when's this come out? And then like August, and that's 6 months away. Like, why are you advertising it now?
Do you know how I knew that Jack Ryan was going to be on your mind this week?
How'd you know?
Because it's on everybody's mind because it's all over IMDb and everywhere else. Like you can't go to any movie without like some sort of Jack Ryan advertisement.
Maybe in season 2 they can correct it. I don't know that I'm going to try it again in season 2.
How many episodes are in season 1?
8. So it wasn't a ton. It wasn't like it's...
Do you watch them all?
Yeah, it's 4 hours. Or no, it's 8 hours. God, why did I spend so much time?
How did you do that?
The reason I did that, and because I like halfway through I knew I didn't like it. But I wanted, if I was going to talk about it on here and be as negative as I thought I was going to be, I wanted to make sure I saw the whole thing, and then that way I could speak from that point of view, having seen the whole thing. I didn't want to be negative about it, only having seen 4 episodes.
Noble of you.
Sure. Makes sense. Taking one for the team.
Yeah.
Your team.
Yeah. Do you have any other thoughts about Jack Ryan?
Don't watch it.
All right, good.
My final thought. All right.
Eloquent.
Thank you. Who's next?
I'll go next. So this week, I wanted to go ahead and take advantage of my AMC membership thing that I signed up for, that I'm paying $20 a month for. I get 3 movies a week, so I went to go see Operation Finale, starring Oscar Isaac and Melanie Laurent and Ben Kingsley.
Ben Kingsley, awesome. Wow, I'm very excited to hear what you thought of it.
So this is a film about an ex-high-ranking SS officer who goes to Argentina after World War II, and he's living under a secret identity and working in a auto factory. And in Argentina, there are a whole bunch of Nazis trying to, I guess, regain power. And Israel decides to send a team of, I guess they're Jewish soldiers, operatives. I'm not exactly sure what their job titles are, but they are basically sent there to abduct him and take him back to Israel to stand trial for war crimes in World War II.
Oh, wait, is this the movie with Cary Grant and Ingrid Bergman?
Yep, that's the one.
Okay,
Yep.
yeah.
It's actually, what he's talking about is notorious. We talked about that, and it's interesting because similar subject matter, Nazis after World War II in South America. But anyway, Operation Finale. So this movie has a lot of good going for it. The cast is great. I love Ben Kingsley. Melanie Laurent from Inglourious Bastards is really great. Oscar Isaac is always charming. But this movie ultimately doesn't really deliver. The performances are all great, especially Ben Kingsley. Ben Kingsley is so unbelievably good in this movie that it makes me very sad I did not like it much more than I did. Ben Kingsley is very charming. He's very scary. He's very relatable. And he really brings a lot of nuance to a character like that, you know, who you hate right off the bat because he's a Nazi. Throughout the course of the movie, you really start to understand him. And ultimately, it's a valiant effort, and there's a lot of stuff in the movie. I can't even think of a bad performance anywhere in the movie. But the script seems very, very Hollywood based on a true story. Like, you know, like too many things that you just don't believe were part of the true story. Too many coincidences to try and condense action. And ultimately, it just feels too Hollywoody, I guess, to really have any kind of weight behind it, or to like merit its subject matter, you know?
Yeah. Let me ask you, is it worth it to watch it for the performances alone, or?
Yeah, because it's not a bad movie by any means, right? Like, I ultimately came away somewhere between 2.5 to 3 stars out of 5, right? It's right in that sweet spot of like, it's neither good nor bad. I think the performances and the subject matter make it worth seeing, but it feels ultimately more like something like an inconsequential World War II movie, like remember that Tom Cruise movie?
Valkyrie?
Yeah.
Something like that, right?
That's the vibe I got from it, because no one was really talking about it that I saw in any sort of high praise way. And
it's better than Valkyrie, though.
Yeah, I feel like when one of these like World War II Nazi-based movies comes out and is really good, we hear about it.
It's an easy film to get behind if it's really good. I think if this movie had been any better, it probably would have been released 2 months from now, right?
Well, I was thinking, that's totally true. We would be hearing about it coming out soon. One thing I was thinking about whenever watching it was, I feel like it would be a lot better with different music and different editing. Like if it were a much slower, quieter movie that kind of made the audience work for it, it would seem like a lot more serious and weighty of a drama, in my opinion. But like the score is always trying to keep you tense, and they're just always trying to condense time and keep it moving and flowing. And that may be because ultimately it's not that great, so they just wanted to keep the pacing pretty fluid. But I feel like it's too fast, and it makes it seem more like an adventure movie instead of like a weighty character drama.
Well,
so, anyway.
That's too bad. I think I might still try to go see it.
I definitely would, especially if you have the AMC pass, because like I said, it's not bad by any way, shape, or form, and Ben Kingsley is phenomenal in it.
Cool. I think I'll wait for this one
I would.
to come out. It doesn't grab me in a way that, and I don't have the pass yet. I guess if I did, and if I had a lot of free time. Maybe,
which I did this weekend.
It doesn't grab me.
Makes sense. There's not a whole lot to grab onto, or to be grabbed by. I don't really know how to add on to that. So, the other film I wanted to talk about before I hand the reins over to Justin was a film I rewatched for the first time in many, many years. And I was inspired by last week's episode on 2001: A Space Odyssey. And so I wanted to see Eyes Wide Shut again. Starring Tom Cruise, Nicole Kidman.
Briefly, Sidney Pollack.
So, yeah, when is the last time either of you guys have seen Eyes Wide Shut, or have you seen it at all?
Real quick, I wanted to tell a story about the first time I watched it. My friend and I bought tickets to see Inspector Gadget with Matthew Broderick and snuck into Eyes Wide Shut. Yeah.
You rebel.
And we had no idea what we got into. So, yeah.
Sexy.
Yeah.
It's been a while since I've seen it, though. That being said.
I think if you have to sneak into Eyes Wide Shut, you're probably not going to enjoy it, would be my guess.
Yeah, we probably thought that it was going to be a different kind of movie.
I can imagine before having seen Eyes Wide Shut, I feel like there's no way you couldn't think it was a different kind of movie because there's not any movie like Eyes Wide Shut.
Right.
No. So to answer your question for me, I've seen it 2 times previously, and the second time was probably 2 years ago, maybe a little less.
Yeah.
So it's pretty recently.
Yeah. So I first saw this when I was a very young child, and I was just watching satellite in my room. And I was much too young to really comprehend anything that was going on. And as a result, I never really liked it that much. I always thought it was kind of just a bad movie, but that's coming from like the lens of like a 13, 14-year-old kid.
Yeah. Like I said, if you have to sneak into it, you probably aren't going to like it.
Exactly. So anyway, I wanted to watch it again because I've just been on a Stanley Kubrick kick lately. And man, this movie is something else. It is, I don't know, it is so good. There's some things that aren't very good about it, but ultimately, I don't think those things matter very much. And I almost feel like the thing so what I'm referring to is, I guess, Nicole Kidman's performance. I feel like she has a very weird performance in this movie, but I don't know that that's a bad performance also. Like, I don't know that it's a bad thing. It's just do you remember her performance at all?
Yeah, I remember it being very intentional.
Yeah.
Like, it seemed like she's going for something very, very specific, and
yeah,
that can go, depending on the person, it can rub you the wrong way.
Yeah, and it's very bizarre, but ultimately I think I really like it. But there are moments where she delivers something, or there's like a scene where she has to like intentionally laugh at Tom Cruise's character, and it's like the weirdest fake laugh ever.
Right.
But it works in the scene. I don't know how else to describe it. It's just very weird. But anyway, this movie, I don't know, the music alone in this movie is just so good. The whole like scene where he gets to the mansion, it is just, I don't know, it's great. So this is actually based on a 1926 novella called Dream Story. And it was written by Arthur
C. Clarke?
No. Schnitzler. But anyway, if you read the plot of this book, Eyes Wide Shut is almost like a scene-for-scene adaptation, except put in like modern-day New York. It's like one man's journey kind of off the deep end after his wife tells him that she had a sexual fantasy about another man. Anyway, it's just something else. I don't even really want to go into it too much here, just because I feel like describing it doesn't do it justice.
Yeah, we'll be on it for a while too, I think, just to even begin to talk about it, because it's got that much going onto it, I think.
Yeah, but ultimately, if you haven't seen Eyes Wide Shut, or if you've only seen it once, or if you've seen it and you just want to watch it again, I recommend doing it, because there's nothing else quite like this movie. And it's one of Tom Cruise's more interesting performances, if you ask me.
Yeah, I'm going to watch it again soon. It's like the perfect intersection of me having just seen 2001 and wanting to revisit some Kubrick, and my girlfriend and I having watched Fallout, and her loving Tom Cruise and wanting to rewatch it. So it's one of those times where we can like really quickly decide on a movie.
Where the stars align.
Yeah. So I know I'm going to watch it very, very soon because of that. And I look forward to it because I remember it fondly.
1999 was a good year for Tom Cruise. Magnolia.
Is that the year?
And
Magnolia, yeah.
And those are Tom Cruise's 2 best performances, if you ask me. Well, maybe not Eyes Wide Shut, I think. But definitely Magnolia.
Maybe his best movies.
Yeah, that might be true. But anyways, that's all I've got.
All right, so this week, what has been on my mind is Terrence Malick. And the reason being is because the Criterion Collection edition of Tree of Life comes out on not this Tuesday, which I guess would be the Tuesday before you hear this, but the Tuesday after you hear this. So like the very next Tuesday from the time you're hearing this, Tree of Life Criterion Collection version will be out. And that's very exciting to me because a while back I read that it has a 52-ish minute extended version of the film. And it also came out this week that the extended version of Tree of Life isn't just the same movie with additional footage. It's from my understanding, like a completely alternate version of the movie. So it feels, I think, if I understand correctly, just a complete re-edit. So it'll be like a totally different film, not just Tree of Life with extra stuff, which excites me because Tree of Life is one of my favorite movies of, the past 10, 20 years. I absolutely love it. And to see a new version of that as opposed to just the same version with more stuff, like, excites me even more than I was already excited just to see the more stuff version,
Yeah, I'm interested to see just how different it is, like how much new footage is in it. Is the old footage going to be in it but repurposed, or just in a different chronological order? Or, like, I have so many questions.
Yeah, same.
I'm totally there for that Blu-ray. I don't know when I'm going to have time to actually watch the extended version, because I haven't seen the regular version of Tree of Life in so long that when I get the Blu-ray, that's got to be the version I watch first, because it's the real version.
The regular one?
Yeah, it's the real version. Yeah. But then I don't know when I'm going to want to get around to watching an hour longer version after that.
It's an hour longer version? So
like 52 minutes, 53 minutes, something like that.
And it's a completely different movie is what he says. So
that's what Malick claims, yeah.
Well, that's what we're talking about.
And the guy who helped him put it together.
Yeah, that's why I was like, I don't know if it's like the same footage, like in a new order and like edited in a different way with different cuts.
I think it's more like different editing of a lot of the same footage plus 50 more minutes.
Yeah.
That's so crazy. So interesting. I haven't seen Tree of Life, but I will correct that this week. That is a promise I make.
All right. So Chris says he's going to watch it tonight.
After recording?
Yeah. And then when the Blu-ray comes out, he's going to watch the extended version like the first day. You heard it here first.
Yeah. Actually, Justin, we should get together and have a Tree of Life party and watch the extended version.
Yes. Fucking love that idea.
I
love Tree of Life. So it's been a while since I've seen the regular version as well, but when it came out, I know I saw it twice in theaters, and then I've probably watched it 3, maybe 4 times since it came out on Blu-ray. So I'm pretty familiar with the regular version. So I'm going straight to alternate version when it comes out.
I think I've seen it probably a similar amount of times, but it's been many years since the last one.
It makes sense. And in my excitement for Tree of Life and about Terrence Malick in general, I decided to revisit The New World, which is his film from 2005, which is basically a live action retelling of the Pocahontas John Smith story about like colonial Virginia. It stars Colin Farrell and Christian Bale, Christopher Plummer, and Q'orianka Kilcher. I'm trying to pronounce that. That's the woman who plays Pocahontas. And I decided to watch, in the spirit of the extended version of Tree of Life, I watched the extended version of The New World, because the Criterion edition has 3 different cuts of The New World on there. I don't know if you guys are aware.
3 different cuts?
Yeah. What's the other one?
It's the very first cut of the movie ever made, so like the first director's cut of the film, which is about 30 minutes longer than the theatrical cut, which is on there. And then the extended cut, which I think is like 40 to 50 minutes longer than the theatrical cut.
That's too many cuts. Just put the real director's cut and the theatrical cut on there.
Yeah.
It is. And the extended cut is supposedly the movie that Malick always wanted.
So then what's the purpose of the first cut?
I have no idea.
It's like, this is just
I'll have to watch it someday. Yeah.
Wasn't there, because I remember when it first came out and was pretty much bombed and was not very well received by critics or audiences. I wonder if they released like an extended cut just like onto DVD or VHS, whatever it was at the time, and just in order to kind of, well, maybe this will be better. It'll go over better than the other one. I don't know.
Yeah. Maybe it's like a sandwich. It's like you can see the first cut where you can see that Malick is clearly a genius. And then you can see the theatrical cut where they cut it down and see how that didn't work out so well. And then you can see the version he got to put together later, which proves again that he's a genius. Maybe that was the thinking. I'm not saying I agree with that opinion, just saying that might be what Malick and Criterion wants to prove.
Yeah. Let me ask you, is this a case of, not letting go of the things you love? Like he's just constantly toying with them? How long has it been since Tree of Life came out and he's still toying with re-edits and extended versions and stuff like that?
Yeah. Well, the extended cut for The New World has been out for a while.
Mm-hmm, right.
Like the Blu-ray regular version that's existed for a while of The New World was the extended cut. So it's not like he tinkered around with it recently when Criterion decided to release it a couple of years ago. It's been around. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's definitive, but I know what you mean in general. New World, it's kind of the situation where they cut stuff for the theatrical version and he felt like it wasn't what he wanted. So I understand that. But with Tree of Life, I think there's an argument to be made with that, because to my understanding, the version we got of Tree of Life, the theatrical version we've all seen, was the version of the movie that he wanted. No one took it from him. No one cut it up or whatever. This is just a second version, I guess, that he also imagined or something or decided to do.
Yeah.
So I think you're right on that.
I'm not against directors doing that. Like Ridley Scott did that with Blade Runner, and I'm glad he did, because the last version, the final cut version, is the best version of Blade Runner, you know? So
right.
I don't inherently not want directors to do that, but I feel like you don't need 3 versions on a disc. But, you know,
sure.
if it's special
I think
features,
you could lose
why
the
not,
first
you know?
cut.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it also has like a really good like hour and a half making of behind the scenes documentary that I watched as well. That was really good. And I haven't really talked about the movie yet, but this is my second time to see the New World. I'm not sure what cut I watched the first time. I don't remember it being as long as the extended cut is, which is almost 3 hours.
Yeah, I remember I watched it and it was long as hell.
Yeah. I mean, his movies, they're not very plot heavy, so they can feel long if you're not super into it.
Oh, no,
so
I was
even
into
the 2
it,
hour version.
and I loved New World, but it still felt long.
Yeah, so maybe you watch the extended cut then, probably.
Probably.
But man, I just am enamored with this movie. I absolutely loved it. I don't know how I felt about it the first time. Like I've always, looked back on it fondly, but
yeah,
I know that it didn't stay with me as much as it has now. Like I haven't been able to really stop thinking about it since I watched it. It's like, it's the most beautiful movie ever made. I think it's very possible.
Visually beautiful, right?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Visually beautiful. I
Just
mean,
wanted to specify.
Yeah, there's emotions to it, but they don't hit as strong as like the visual or the aesthetic that the film builds, like both visually and with like its soundscape, like its music and all of its like Terrence Malick-esque voiceover.
Yeah,
of people saying thoughtful things.
Yeah.
But Emmanuel Lubezki shot the film, and like the combination of him and Malick, which I believe they also collaborated on Tree of Life, is just a magical combination to me. Like I could watch that endlessly.
You know, the only Malick movie I've seen multiple times, I believe, is Tree of Life. And well, I saw Thin Red Line when I was a really little kid, but I don't remember it. But the only one I've seen more than once that I can remember is Tree of Life, and I still think New World is my favorite Terrence Malick movie.
I get it now. I might not have agreed when I was like full on Tree of Life watcher.
Man. Yeah, I remember when I watched it, and I think I stayed up until like the sun came up because I didn't realize how long it was going to be.
Yeah.
Like I looked out the window and like it was like morning time, and it took me like a year to shake that movie. It stays with you. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's absolutely wonderful. Like every shot like is just this perfect shot, like this perfect like frame. To be a little cliche, hang it on your wall and it's art, right? And it's like the best piece of art in your house. Like every shot is like that. I don't understand what they do, like the magic that they make, but there's just this feeling of watching that film and Tree of Life and Thin Red Line and Malick's films that like, they just don't feel like any other film. They don't look like any other film. Like you could pick a Malick film out immediately.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But yeah, I strongly recommend it. Revisit it. If you haven't seen this one, or if you saw Tree of Life and that was your introduction to Malick and you didn't like it, like a lot of people don't, go back and revisit The New World, because it is a lot more of a coherent story, but with all the same sensibilities that make Tree of Life really great in terms of visuals and tone and stuff.
Yeah, so if you absolutely hate that and you hate Terrence Malick's style, this is more of that. But give it another chance, because when you think about it, you're wrong.
For sure. Yeah.
Where does New World rank against Tree of Life?
I mean, oh man, they're so close. They're so close. I'm so much more familiar with Tree of Life, so it kind of...
He feels bad for cheating on Tree of Life.
Yeah.
He's trying to justify it to himself.
Yeah.
He's like,
I'm a little worried
really
next time I'm watching Tree of Life, I'm going to be thinking of the New World.
Yeah. You'll just have to put the New World Blu-ray on top of the TV and just look past the TV.
Okay. Yeah,
All
so
right.
that's it for me for what's on my mind.
All right. Are we ready to move into our review of Searching, starring John Cho, directed by Anish Shaganti? I apologize, Anish, if I'm not saying your name correctly.
Come on the show. We'll do an interview with you. You
Yeah.
can set the record straight on how to pronounce your name.
911, what's your emergency?
I'm calling to report a missing person.
Okay, who is this regarding? My daughter.
I think we're gonna go late, like, all night.
1. After a study session, Margot didn't return home.
Margot Kim. School has her marked as absent today.
2. She didn't attend school on Friday.
My daughter is in a lesson with you right now?
Margot canceled her classes 6 months ago.
And 3. She's been transferring funds for the last 6 months.
Okay, so as always, before we get into Searching, we are going to be giving a general review without giving any spoilers away first, and we will give you a spoiler alert so that you know when we are about to start spoiling things for the film, and then you can stop the episode, go see the movie, come back, finish the episode, and it won't be spoiled for you.
All right, so Searching. The IMDb synopsis says, after his 16-year-old daughter goes missing, a desperate father breaks into her laptop to look for clues to find her. All right, guys. So this is, we mentioned it a little earlier, part of a new genre of film coming out called Screen Life, which is the technology used to actually capture the screen of the computer and, how the movie is made. I think the other notable entries into this mini genre so far are like the Unfriended movies, which I haven't seen.
Right.
So this is my first experience with Screen Life. What about you guys?
Yeah, so I haven't seen those movies. There was a piece of, do you guys remember those films, the VHS films?
Mm-hmm.
I never saw them, but I remember them.
Yeah, like the whole little horror anthology. It was made up of a bunch of like little short horror films, basically. One of those was a Screen Life film that took place entirely on like a Skype call or 2 or 3 or whatever. So I saw that piece of that, but I didn't watch any of the Unfriended movies. It was one of my favorites of the VHS movie, like one of my favorite shorts, but overall it's sandwiched in between a bunch of movies that I didn't really like, so it was kind of hard to say.
Yeah.
Like
That's
on the whole, I didn't like VHS.
That's usually the case for horror anthology movies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. This is my first experience with the Screen Life genre as well. The Unfriended movies never really looked like something that I was interested in to begin with, so I never went out of my way to try and watch them. But this one actually looked really interesting to me, so...
It seemed like, I guess with like weird genres like this, the temptation is to go straight to horror, because that seems like what happens with like found footage type movies and stuff.
Well, and also it's like, it's a good, cheap way to bring in mass audiences.
Right, for something new and different.
Right.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so this one didn't seem like a straight up horror movie, so I was intrigued, and I like John Cho. He was very likable in the trailer.
Yeah, me too. I've always liked John Cho, so it's good to see him getting to do leading roles now, you know?
Yeah.
So do we want to go into our overall thoughts of the movie now?
Yeah.
All right, well, I can go first then.
All right.
So overall, I will say that I enjoyed the movie. While I was watching it, I was having, a good time. I was enjoying like watching the plot unfold and watching the mystery unfold. I think that the movie is best served when you just try to do that and try not to actively think about the movie, because what's disappointing is how uninspired some of the things that happen later in the movie feels, or like how I feel like I was way ahead of the movie in a lot of places. And sometimes the movie shows you things and explains things to you that you've already thought about and already figured out. It makes you feel like they think you're dumb sometimes, because you're so far ahead of the movie at points that having something explained to you and over explained in some ways, like it just feels like kind of redundant and a little uninteresting. So I found that like the times where I was just sitting back, looking at the movie, watching the plot, not trying to figure it out, was the time that I was enjoying the movie the most, because then I was just able to like enjoy the ride and watch John Cho perform, because I think he's pretty good in this.
Mm-hmm.
I really enjoyed his performance, and I felt for him as like a father whose daughter is missing. And yeah, it's just a weird movie, because as much as I enjoyed it with not thinking about it, at the end of the day, when I start thinking about it, it gets less good.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So yeah, that's where I come down.
I am not that far off from you, Justin. I had high hopes going into this movie because I was definitely interested in the new genre, and I hadn't seen something like that before. I really enjoyed the opening credits to this movie. It was similar to Up in... I mean, it didn't pack the emotion that Up did, but I felt emotion in that opening sequence, and I thought it was really well done.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, I think the genre and the gimmick of it being screen life really elevated this movie, like elevated a bland story or like a typical mystery story, if that makes sense. And and so the gimmick of the movie made it better. If it hadn't been for that gimmick, it just wouldn't have worked as well. I really thought John Cho was good, just like you. He's really good in this, and I think he needs more leading roles because I think he can be really good. Ultimately, the third act is kind of what let me down. I think the first two acts were really fun and really intriguing, but the third act just kind of ground a lot of stuff to a halt and kind of drop stuff. I think, actually, so what I would say about this movie, whether you're going to go to the theater or stay home, watch this on your laptop is what I would say. You know, wait till it comes out on DVD and then watch it on your computer or your laptop, because that'd be the best way to watch this movie, right?
But don't watch it on DVD. Watch it on Blu-ray or VOD and not DVD, because DVDs are old.
Is that what? Yeah. Did I say DVD?
You always say DVD.
Because you're old.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways.
I was going to ask that. Is this like the first movie where you're like, yeah, watch it on your phone, watch it on your laptop or your tablet?
Yeah.
It makes sense.
Yeah. Watch it on your laptop for sure. And I don't think you need to go to the theater. It's fun, and the gimmick is fun. I just wish the story helped out a little bit more there. So that's what I think. Mike, what do you think?
I have to say, I am not really a huge fan of this film. I don't really strongly dislike it, and there is a lot in this film to like. It's very creative in a lot of ways, like the way they show emotions while characters are typing, or we can sort of see where their heads are at by what they're looking at on screen. That's all very cool. But I feel like this movie is limited by its own gimmick or genre, and the third act of the film is aggressively stupid. Some of the bending over backwards that they have to do to keep this gimmick up is so rough and clunky. However, that said, John Cho is very good in this, like you guys said. He plays stressed very well. He plays a father living a terrible nightmare. I think maybe some of the other actors aren't really as strong, but that could also be some of the clunky, exposition-y third act dialogue they have to deliver. I don't know. Overall, this movie is going to please a lot of people. I think it's very crowd-pleasing.
I agree with that for sure.
It's mostly well-made, but I don't think I can recommend it. If you do see it at home, and try not to pay for it.
Right. You know what this film feels like to me, or what it reminds me of? And I guess it's not the first movie to do this, obviously, because we talked about the Unfriended films and a couple other examples. But this feels like the way that I felt about Paranormal Activity when it came out, and there was the resurgence of like found footage films for a while. Mm-hmm. And they just kind of got progressively worse and progressively more ludicrous and more like lame horror found footage films.
Yeah.
And then I always had the conversation of like, well, I remember Paranormal Activity being pretty good.
Yeah.
And it's not that great, but it felt good at the time. And then in retrospective, things that came after it, it seemed better. And I feel like this film might be one of those films if like the screen life genre continues.
From my understanding, I read it somewhere, heard it somewhere, but there's 14 more movies, screen life movies, coming from this production company alone.
Let's put it this way. If this is the strongest example of a screen life, and it's only going to get more exploitative and cheap from here, like the Paranormal Activity movies did, like if this is Paranormal Activity 1 for a new genre, then there's a very low high point. And I feel like the genre will not last nearly as long as the found footage one did, because it's jumping off of a much less interesting premise. But I'm sounding like I hate the movie, and I don't really hate it at all. It's a fine movie. So let me talk about something I did like real quick.
Sure.
I like when he's texting his daughter, John Cho. It shows us a little more about where he's at, where his head's at, without using dialogue or any kind of clunky conversation. I find that to be very interesting. You know, you can say a lot about someone's emotional state in the pauses they have before they type certain words or the things they choose to omit. I did enjoy all of that. Like the first hour of this movie, I think is very strong.
That's what works in movies generally. It's like a show don't tell, is some like when cinema is at its best a lot of the times, not all the time, but a lot of the time. And yeah, I totally agree. That was where I was like, I was really feeling things and really connecting with like the characters, is how they were typing things, or like even just seeing a mouse click on certain files on the computer and do certain things with them, and the way that it's interacting with them. Like all you're seeing is an arrow on a screen pointing to like
but
letters.
The slow way it's moving tells you so much about who's moving it.
Yeah. All of that is really good and really interesting. And that's part of the movie that felt like fresh and new and very interesting about this genre to me.
Right.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. If it wasn't so hard to keep up, you know, I wish it could have closed with that.
It's the same problem with the found footage films, being able to maintain its believability. And towards the end of found footage films, it's just like, why are you guys still carrying the camera?
Exactly.
You know, so it's kind of the same thing here.
Yeah, I think that's a struggle, or going to be something I'm interested to see how people struggle and deal with and get creative with this genre, to see how they maintain it without just seeming like, okay, your character's only doing this so that we can maintain your screen life, right? Like ordinarily they would just get up and drive somewhere and do something, but instead they have to, you know, make sure they have a device around or with them so we can see them.
So Justin, you actually touched on something that reminds me we have a listener question.
All
so
right.
This is from the Film Inquiry Podcast Network on Twitter. They ask, most important question: how well do you need to know someone before you FaceTime them? Because if you live on the same planet as John Cho, he will FaceTime you. That's a great question. And so my answer to that question would be never. Never FaceTime me, anyone. I've never FaceTimed. I do not want to FaceTime. That's my answer to that. So I would not be friends with John Cho.
Now who's old?
I feel like it's not an old, young thing. I feel like it's just a, does this serve a purpose or not thing.
Yeah, I mean, I could see doing it if there's some reason. Like, I'm at the store and I need you to help me buy the right kind of ketchup. Like,
but
I'm FaceTiming
that's nothing
you.
a text message couldn't do. Text messages are immediate these days.
If I need them, like, it may be faster to, like, let me show you all of the ketchups and you tell me which one, as opposed to having to describe them through a text message or describe them through a call. Like, I don't know, it's red and it says there's less sugar in it, but this one also says it's reduced sugar. I don't know.
So anyway, how well do you need to know someone before you have that ketchup FaceTime conversation, though?
Well enough to be going to the store to buy ketchup for them.
So pretty good. Pretty
good, because I don't buy ketchup for everyone.
Hey, I don't blame you.
It'd have to be a relationship for sure. I've FaceTimed long distance relationships, you know, because you don't see them every week, so you FaceTime them in order to see them. But yeah, I don't really FaceTime any of my family. But
Same.
Yeah.
I think an exclusive romantic relationship.
I feel like,
and I don't know that the time matters as much as the relationship matters.
Yeah, and I'm okay with that with John Cho. So
I feel like his daughter probably gets super annoyed with him for constantly FaceTiming her and never just normal calling.
Actually, that's pretty sneaky for a dad. So you FaceTime call your daughter and you just talk to her, but you also get to see the surroundings.
I'm sure that's not lost on the daughter.
Yeah.
And real quick, we have another question from the Movie Geek and Proud podcast. It says, would you consider this filming format a found footage film? Whether it is or not, it seems that this format is slowly growing and less of the shaky camera found footage films that we are used to, and I like it.
I would say that this is a cousin to the found footage film.
It's very similar, but
very similar.
It's not found footage. I think it's just screen life. I think that's what they're calling it.
Yeah.
But it's the same thing. It's like splitting hairs, I think.
I feel like a trope of the found footage film, usually it means that everyone who's in the film has to like die at the end and someone has to find it.
Or something. Sometimes.
That's kind
usually.
of what always happens. Or someone, they have to lose it and get rid of it. And this isn't necessarily what's going on.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to get like really...
that gimmick a little bit.
Yeah, I'm trying to like get really into it and get really technical of like, it seems like it's just a file on his computer that, or an edited together a file on his computer. He could have done it. So it wasn't really found.
It reminded me a lot of Chronicle, the Josh Trank movie from 2010.
Yeah.
I think that movie uses found footage in a really interesting way, especially in the third act. It starts switching between phone screens and security camera footage and stuff like that. And that's a lot of what this film does too. Yeah, I'd say if you like this film and you haven't seen Chronicle, check that out.
Yeah, Chronicle's really good. I just recently watched it this year.
Yeah, I liked it a lot.
I think what'll happen is that the screen life genre, someone will come along and make a really great screen life film. I don't think this is quite there yet. This is okay to good for me, but this isn't everything you can do with the screen life genre.
Yeah, I want to see the personless, videoless screen life genre where we maybe pictures, but I mean like the My Dinner with Andre of screen life genres where it's just a text conversation.
Yeah, where he doesn't have Skype open to look at himself the entire time.
They have those on Facebook all the time. They're like text stories is what they're called. And it's like, get out of the house as the mom's texting the daughter. And just the text that is all you get to read.
I don't want that though. I don't want like a horror story in text form. I want My Dinner with Andre.
Oh, okay.
my text conversation with Andre.
Actually, that's what we should do that. We should just take the script for My Dinner with Andre and turn it into
text
a text
it to each other.
Oh, yeah. That's so much to read though. I mean, I guess the whole thing is, but like...
That's what you wanted, man. That's what you wanted.
Well, you can see them click around and move things and like look up stuff. It's not just like straight, like here's a paragraph of text, now read it.
Okay.
I don't know. Anyways, I think this movie's kind of hard to talk about without being spoilery because it's so much a mystery. So anything else before we go into spoilers?
No, let's do it.
All right, let's go.
No, I guess Rosebud is just a piece in a jigsaw puzzle.
I'll tell you what, give me one of them cigarettes you got up there. I'll tell you all about it.
And here we go.
All right, so one thing I really enjoyed about this movie was the commentary on social media, like how nothing on social media is genuine. The kids who didn't really know John Cho's daughter that well all wanted to look like they knew her or cared, either for school purposes or clicks or views or whatever their reasons were. You kind of got to see like the ugliness and like the selfishness of people. Like there's a girl missing and none of them really care. It's all like to feed their own social media pages, you know?
Yeah, the theater of social media.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's truly depressing to see on screen. And I thought that was actually the best part of the movie, in my opinion.
Right, just seeing the reaction of like the world. And I think before social media, people were probably still pretending like they knew people better than they were in like those tragic situations. But I think what really got to me was stuff like when he would visit the Reddit page and there were like theories that he did it.
Right.
Just like thinking about how that would feel for him to like read those and like read the comments of like the dad did it or like he's a crappy dad for letting this happen to his daughter, all that stuff that's out there on the internet that like has no consideration for the people involved.
Yeah, exactly. You know, when those things are being posted or when you're reading those things, you never think about the actual people they're about being able to read those things as well. But, you know, the internet's open to everyone. So, yeah, that part was just really sad. And I thought pretty poignant.
Surprisingly poignant for this movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
On that note with poignancy, how did you guys feel about the opening credits? Were you as high up on them as I was?
Yeah, I liked the opening credits quite a bit. I didn't get choked up or anything, but I remember thinking like, oh, this movie is going to be good.
Mm-hmm.
You know, based on the opening credits, I was like, look what they're doing. Look where they're going. Look how like easily they manipulate the audience here. You know, I think the opening credits are really great.
Yeah, I enjoyed them. I think, you know, it does feel a little bit like a repeat of Up, and I couldn't help but think about that.
Yeah, I thought of that
when
too.
it happened. So in some ways, I guess like it felt a little unoriginal in that sense, but still effective. I think not as much as I was affected during Up, or as much as I've been affected by other things. But it was interesting. Like it set me up, like you, Mike. I think it set me up as like, well, this is starting off good.
Yeah.
So here we go. Did you guys have any people laughing in the audience at maybe inappropriate times, or times that you felt were inappropriate?
I don't recall any of that. I actually had a pretty good audience.
There were actually gasps in my audience, but there's a very young audience, and so every once in a while there'd be like some giggles or whatever. I saw it on a Sunday afternoon, and usually Sunday afternoons are safe, but it wasn't this time.
I just had an old person who I don't think understood what social media was, or like what was going on. So like he was talking to his wife the whole time, trying to
what am I watching?
Follow what was happening.
I do think that's interesting, actually, and that kind of is some of the things that were being laughed at that I noticed that were like didn't necessarily seem funny to me, or seem funny in the context of the movie, but there was parts where like a decent chunk of my theater would laugh at John Cho's like ability to search or like to find social media. Like it almost seemed like there was laughter breaking out when like he searched what is her name, Margot Kim. It was like Margot Kim social media or whatever he Googled, and like people started laughing, and then he clicked on the Instagram and they started laughing again. And it seemed like a kind of a tragic moment where he was deciding to like desperately sort of search for her. And I guess there's some sort of joke that I just didn't get. Because I don't know, there are other clear jokes in the movie that are made under like social media expense, where he's like, he finds out from the one girl that like, well, she had a Tumblr, and he's like, what's Tumblr? And then it shows him spelling Tumblr, and it's like the full spelling with the E instead of no E. Like that's a clear joke that's funny. But I don't know, it kind of surprised me to hear people laughing at that. I guess it's like a old guy trying to do stuff that he doesn't understand.
If people can laugh at Hereditary, then, you know, they can laugh at anything.
That's true, but I think we talked about the Hereditary laughing as like laughing because you're so uncomfortable that you don't know what else to do. This seemed like it just felt mean-spirited, actually.
Yeah,
now
people
that
are mean-spirited.
Talking about it. Yeah, I guess that's true.
Surprise, surprise.
Yeah.
So I kind of wanted to talk about where I feel like the movie started to lose me.
Okay.
So I did not enjoy the vigil scene at all, where John Cho races to the funeral service to confront the detective. This is where the movie started to really fall apart for me. Like he stares at her in the middle of the aisle really dramatically, and then the police come in from either exit after John Cho gets adequate time to dramatically stare at her. And then they mosey on in and then just proceed to like arrest her in the most awkwardly staged scene. First of all, did he call them on the way there? And they were like, yeah, we believe you. We're going to send 3 cars with backup. We're not going to call our detective friend. We're not going to, like, this is someone who works for them. And they're just like, we got it, John Cho.
Yeah, well, John Cho meets the cops outside the church first. And they're like, all right, you go in first, John Cho, and stare at her.
Yeah.
Just really
make sure she really knows.
Yeah.
She's armed, and she's a detective, and she knows she's cornered. But we're going to go ahead and just corner her in front of all these people where anything bad could happen. I mean, that's rough, guys, right? Am I the only one here?
I didn't have that much of a problem with it at the time. And I think it's kind of like Justin says, the more you think about it, the more it kind of falls apart.
I couldn't not think about it. The whole time I was like, why are the police acting so terribly here? Like,
well, I thought that a lot of the movie.
Yeah, that's true. But that's where it was just like so offensively bad. They just wanted to have a dramatic moment where John Cho and her were finally in the same frame together at the same time. And it's just like, I got nothing from that scene because it's just so bad.
I mean, the cops coming in didn't bother me because I think at that point I was trying to wrap my head around the twist of the movie, of it being Deborah Messing's character. At that point, because I felt like that twist was so out of nowhere, not out of nowhere in the way that like it's surprising, and good, but out of nowhere in the way that like it didn't quite make sense to me, in a sense of like you can bring in something out of nowhere that the audience has no expectation of or no ability to guess at all and surprise an audience, but that's not really doing the work, right?
Right. They didn't lay the groundwork, the clues in the Act 1 and Act 2, right?
I feel like there are clues that you can look back in retrospect and be like, oh yeah, that was a clue. But they're very minor clues, and then the movie expects you to take a really large logic jump.
Right. The only other option, though, too, here is there's only really 3 characters in this movie, and we've already eliminated the brother as being the murderer, right? So there's only one option.
That's true. Anyway, the twist itself I'm okay with, but the way in which it's all executed is very rough. And this is what I mean when I say it's both helped and hurt by its own genre.
Yeah, as far as the twist goes, it's an example where I kind of like where the movie ends up, despite having to go through the twist and not enjoying going through the twist, because I think that's part of it too, is that when you portray the twist in the way that this movie does, it kind of reminds me of like, it feels like it's self-aware of how important its twist is and how awesome its twist is at times. And it's a bit like making a trophy for yourself that says like best person ever to me. Like that's the vibe I get when this movie, when it tries to pull off the twist. And I would rather just get through it. And it's like, once we figured it out, like you said, Mike, we have to sit through that kind of long vigil scene and we already know what's happening and we have to sit through that whole thing. And I'd rather just get on and get to the stuff afterwards, because where it goes afterwards to me is interesting.
Kind of.
Explain that. Yeah. What is it that you find interesting after that?
Yeah, because I think it's all downhill from there.
Yeah.
Well, so I guess like the theme of doing whatever for your kid and the different paths that can take, whereas John Cho will do whatever for his kid to save her, and so will Deborah Messing. And both of those take them down different moral paths. And I don't know, I thought that was interesting that it ended up with there was no one that was like purely evil. Like I was surprised to that extent that no one ended up just being like a villain that you were just like, that just like, I wanted to murder this woman and like rape her and kill her or something. Like we had thought, like, because we had that initially with the guy that like confessed and shot himself. And I was happy to see that we ended with like a villain that you understand and a villain with motives that make them not just evil.
Yeah, and they do the work to try and set it up somewhat at the beginning when she tells the story about how her son stole money from the neighbors by lying.
Yeah.
And she's like, well, this one time I let him keep the money, but I will always deny it, you know? So like it shows you like she's willing to make moral compromises for her son. And I see what you're saying. Like it reminded me a lot of the Bong Joon-ho film Mother.
Right.
But I think because Mother is so good, and that's what I was thinking of, this didn't
really
I
can't argue with
me.
that.
So the scene where they have the detective who is the bad guy in the interrogation room,
Deborah Messing?
Yeah, was terrible.
Yeah, this is where the movie lost me. And, you know, Justin, you have the themes and stuff, but man, it's just an exposition dump. She's like, I'm going to go
clunky
over
one.
Yeah, that's where the movie lost me. And I was just
like, she's explaining everything, and it's a confession, so it kind of makes sense, but she's explaining it in such a way to where, like, I feel like she's explaining it to, like, a 5-year-old and not the police officers who are her peers. Also, the scene where, like, he's like, what happened then? And she's like, and then he realized it had rained 2 days ago. And then it shows, like, the cop cars from, like, the bird's eye view pulling a U-turn. And it's like, did he actually, like, is he riding in the back seat with them? And then while they're arresting this woman, and then
they put him in the front seat.
Yeah, who is John Cho?
She's in the back seat.
Yeah, like, why is John Cho have such control over the police department?
Is he like the mayor of the town or something?
Yeah. He must have made a huge donation to them.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's my thing, is there's so many logic gaps to where like John Cho just seems to like be in the right place with the police while they're doing their jobs all the time.
And did they not? Yeah. Did nobody think about that before, though? You know, like I guess it's the logic gaps, but like, oh, it rained. She's probably still okay. Let's go find out. You know,
it's just weird that like halfway to the police station, John Cho's like, "Wait a minute, it rained. Everyone, turn around. Don't bring her to jail yet. We have multiple cars, but let's turn them all around."
Yeah,
right. It's dramatic.
It's stupid. It feels like every time it cuts to news report footage and it cuts away from like the computer screen or a phone screen, the movie falls apart. Because there's another scene earlier in the movie that's actually pretty terrible. And it's when like the news footage is pulling the car out of the lake.
They're doing the exposition through the
Yeah,
news
and it's like,
that.
oh, good thing they're just, zooming in on John Cho over there.
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
I don't
And they're like,
it's,
it wasn't a very satisfying like way to learn about things.
Yeah, and I didn't mind it so much at the beginning because I felt like, well, it's the gimmick. They have to do it this way. It just felt really clunky at the end for me.
Yeah, I agree. If the end had been pulled off a little better, the rest of it, I'd have looked over.
I think one thing the end makes me happy of is that the whole movie, I was very annoyed with how bad of a detective Deborah Messing was being.
So it explains it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, what is she doing? Like, why? I was annoyed. Like, I thought I was picking apart the logic of the film that like John Cho can figure this out, but the cop can't. But then in the end, it made sense. So I was kind of happy that the twist happened for that reason because I was like, okay, at least the rest of the movie wasn't as dumb.
Yeah.
Points.
Well, like you said, on paper the twist isn't terrible, right? The idea of a mother doing whatever it takes to protect her son from his mistakes, that in itself is not bad. It's just the execution. And really, in my opinion, it all starts falling apart at the vigil scene onwards.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And even when I think like the themes being interesting, it's like it's purely thinking about the themes completely out of context of the film.
Right.
Yeah, it's just what it stirs inside of you.
Yeah.
It's like Roger Ebert a long time ago. I think it was in regards to Prometheus. He gave it 4 stars. And when Prometheus came out, a lot of people didn't like it because characters make stupid decisions in it. And Ebert was saying, he rated it 4 stars because of the feelings it stirred within him. Not for any other reason, but like the thoughts that it made him think and like the places that made his imagination go to when thinking about a lot of the themes in Prometheus. And sometimes, I agree with that. Sometimes I can like what a movie inspires inside of me more than I do the actual movie itself.
Yeah, it sounded like we were a lot more negative towards the end than we initially started off at.
The things that if you're going to be positive on the movie, it's things that you can really only feel on a first viewing and while you're watching the movie and also not thinking about it. Like I genuinely think the ride itself is not bad until the very, very end. Like I was fully interested in it. I was excited to see where it goes. I was enjoying the performances. I didn't think Deborah Messing was bad. Not great, but I didn't think the brother was bad. Like all of the performances seemed good enough to carry the story and keep it interesting.
And while we're on the brother real quick, I really enjoyed the scene when John Cho like attacks him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because at first you're like, oh God, what was he doing? Because you're like, ugh. Like those text messages out of context sound so terrible, right?
Yeah.
And that's something that was set up really early in the movie too. Like even though it was just weed, we know John Cho's character like hates weed. He doesn't even like when his brother smokes weed by himself. Because like in the Skype call earlier in the movie or the FaceTime call, he like gives his brother a hard time for having weed on the counter. So he would not like his daughter having weed. So you understand why the daughter and the brother wanted to hide it so much. Right. So like all of that was great. Perfect character setup, execution. I really, really like that scene a lot.
Ultimately, I would say that this is a fun ride for the first 2/3, and then it kind of falls apart at the end. But I think it's worth it for the first 2/3 because it's fun, and I like
absolutely. And if you're not one who like tries to get ahead of the movie and can turn your brain off and enjoy a ride without analyzing everything, then see it. Because like I said, I think this will be a crowd-pleasing movie. I think I'm in the minority and being so harsh on it.
It depends on what the majority is. Is the majority...
I feel like I was the only one in my screen who didn't seem to like it when it was over.
And the internet buzz is very positive on this film.
Yeah, and in some ways it feels like they played it very, very safe because this is such a big movie doing like a relatively brand new Screen Life thing that's like Screen Life but not horror. And particularly when we're talking about the scene with the brother where he starts to get suspicious about him, like they can't even really go too far down that path of what you think it might be at first. Because, and I started thinking about this during the movie, I was like, oh, this movie's PG-13. Like, I don't expect them to go down that path. Like, I fully knew that it was going to be something else. I imagined it was the weed, and I was trying not to think about it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty predictable, but the acting is on point there. So
yeah, no,
it still worked for me on that level,
Yeah.
even though it's not particularly surprising. I just enjoyed the way the setup, the vague text messages, and John Cho's like stressed face. Yeah. Like, you could tell he's just about like to beat the shit out of his brother, and he loves his brother. So it's like, it's not even like it's a bad relationship, you know. It's just like he is just so good in the movie that I was there for that journey, and I believed that like he was ready to bash his brother's face in.
Yeah, being ahead of the movie at that point isn't really an issue because the scene is still really interesting thinking about what John Cho is going through. One thing I did want to point out that I'm not sure if it's a clever detail because I didn't pick it up, but a friend of mine pointed it out to me, or if it's a detail that annoys me, but the mascot of her high school, Margot's high school, is a catfish, and the whole twist and like thing ends up being that she was catfished by the fish and chips person on that live cast UCast thing. On the nose, as you said, Mike, and I didn't catch it, so I can't be like, that was so obvious. But now that I know that was there, it does kind of annoy me. I don't know.
It doesn't annoy me. I think that's actually pretty clever.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. Maybe I'm more annoyed that I didn't catch it and I'm dumb.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it is pretty on the nose. So, I don't.
Yeah. I think they were called the Finns though, and the mascot was a catfish. So it wasn't like they were called the San Jose Catfish.
Yeah, the catfished.
That wasn't the team name.
The catfished.
Okay. Anybody got anything else on Searching before we move on?
Not I.
Think we've covered it. I'm searching to see if there's anything else, but I don't think I can find it.
All right, we'll be sure and
Quick,
FaceTime
Chris, how do you spell
Tumblr?
tmblr.com.
Nope.
Timbler?
Oh, Tinder. Tinder.
Oh, you know that one. All right, so before we end the show, we did want to go over our poll for the Casually Criterion episode. We put the poll out where you could select one of our themes for the Casually Criterion episode, and we have a winner for that. Mike, do you want to tell us what the winner is?
Yes, I do, Justin. One moment, please.
We should just leave the blank in, too.
Yeah.
1 moment, please.
All right. So the 3 themes that we had to choose from based on Crazy Rich Asians were Fish Out of Water, which was Chris's, Weddings, which was Justin's, and then Family Heritage, which was mine. And the winner with 38% was Chris with Fish Out of Water.
Yes.
Yay.
Way to go, everyone. Now we'll never hear this down.
No.
All right. So, everyone, what this means is now we each choose a Criterion film based on the theme Fish Out of Water. We'll put the poll up on Twitter, so by the time you're listening to this, the poll will be there. If you're on Facebook or whatever, drop on over to our Twitter feed and vote for your favorite movie.
All right, so who wants to go first with their movie pick?
I'll go first. For my pick, I'm picking one that I have not seen before. It's called The Man Who Fell to Earth with Bon Jovi in it. I know not very much about it, except for it. I believe there's a man that fell to Earth.
Hang on.
So, it's a good joke, Chris?
Yeah, are you joking?
Because if you're
right
joking, that's really good. And if you're not, what?
I don't know very much about the film.
No, but do you do realize that it's David Bowie and not Bon Jovi, right?
Oh, yes. I didn't even realize I said Bon Jovi.
That is way different than David Bowie.
Yeah. All right.
We should remake this. Can we remake this movie with Bon Jovi?
I don't know how I got those mixed up. Maybe it's the B. But it happens. Senility is setting in, I think. All right. So for
I'm sorry, hang on. It makes me laugh just picturing Bon Jovi.
It's like Bon Jovi doing all the things that David Bowie does in the movie. I know.
My bad. All right. So for my pick, I chose The Man Who Fell to Earth with David Bowie. And yeah, I don't know a whole lot about this film. I know that both of you guys have seen it, but I haven't. I do believe it's about a guy that fell to Earth. But other than that, I don't know much more about it. So I'm very excited. So picking this movie, would be a good choice for you guys as you vote.
Yeah, it's directed by Nicholas Roeg, which he did Walkabout, which we covered previously on the Casually Criterion episode. So
that was one of my first episodes.
Yeah, that was.
It was. Yeah, that might give you some sort of impression as to like the type of film that you're in for.
It makes me a little bit more excited for it, too.
This is definitely a fish out of water story for sure, because David Bowie plays an alien.
So who wants to go next? I can go next if you want, Mike.
Yeah, go for it. You sound pretty excited about it.
I am. So I struggled with this one because I had a lot of fun things that I wanted to pick with it. At first, I wanted to pick The Lure, which is about mermaids that come to land, and it would be very literally fish out of water. And then I wanted to pick Fishing with John because they're fishing and probably pulling fish out of the water. I assume I've never seen it. I think I'm going to go with a film that I have only seen once and really enjoyed, and that film is Mon Oncle by Jacques Tati.
Ooh.
And
that's exciting.
Yeah, very exciting.
It's a French film. The translation is My Uncle. And it's the sort of famous Jacques Tati character, Monsieur Hulot, who is from one of my favorite films, Monsieur Hulot's Holiday, which I've seen a bunch. I absolutely love it, and I've never revisited Mon Oncle, so I really, really hope this wins for that reason. But it's about Monsieur Hulot, who's kind of this sort of bumbling everyman, and he goes to visit his family. He is the uncle. The family lives in like this sort of like futuristic house, like sort of house of the future, where a lot of things are automated, and there's a ton of like visual comedy and slapstick humor that comes out of him trying to navigate this futuristic house and deal with all the things that it does, like automatically cleaning the dishes and that sort of thing.
Yeah, sounds awesome.
Yeah,
I've only ever seen Playtime and Monsieur Hulot's Holiday.
Yeah.
So this is like the main one of his that I have yet to see.
Right. He gets like progressively more interested in pushing messages and less about like comedy.
That's Playtime for sure.
Yeah, that's where Playtime ends up, even though there's a lot of good stuff in Playtime. But Monsieur Hulot's Holiday is a lot more enjoyable. And this film, I remember kind of bridging the gap between the two. Like it's a more balanced version of Playtime. So awesome. I'm really looking forward to revisiting it. Please vote for it.
And in case you have never heard of any of these movies, this is like Mr. Bean before Mr. Bean was a thing.
Yes. Very true.
It's like a bumbling fool who doesn't ever talk, bumbling his way through funny situations. It's like a cartoon, like a walking cartoon character. Very iconic.
For sure. All right, Mike, what do you got?
So what I wanted to choose for Fish Out of Water is a film that I have not seen in quite a while, but I absolutely love it, and that is Black Narcissus.
Ooh,
starring
nice.
Deborah Kerr. So this is a film about a group of nuns who decide to open a convent way up in the Himalaya mountains, where they are completely out of their element. There are no other Christians around for miles, and they are trying to convert the natives. And throughout their time there, each of their faith is tested in very personal and very crazy ways by the end of it. And this film is beautiful. One of the best looking movies I've ever seen. Like some of the best use of color, and super awesome title. Yeah, what's not to like? So this is Powell and Pressburger at the height of their fame. They did The Red Shoes and The Life and Death of Colonel Blimp and dozens of other movies. Peeping Tom.
Tom, yeah.
Did a lot of really cool, really interesting
a lot
stuff.
Of great movies, yeah. So
this is towards the top of their list for me.
Yeah, and so anyway, Black Narcissus is part drama, part thriller, part romance. It's the whole package. So
awesome. Well, I am happy with no matter what movie gets picked for sure. I wouldn't mind watching any of them. So
yeah, same.
Yeah, I'm definitely excited to see what gets picked, and yeah.
So I guess that does it for the show. If no one else has anything else.
Not I.
Nope.
Awesome. Well, thank you for listening to the episode. Thanks as always to Jake Wagner Russell for doing our intro and outro music. You can hear more of his music at soundcloud.com/bobscotch.
All right, our next episode, we're going to each choose our 5 most anticipated fall movies.
Yay. These episodes are fun.
Yeah, that's going to be real fun. So I always look forward to like any kind of episode where we can just basically just talk about movies the whole time and not actually break down like a full movie.
Right.
Yeah.
Those are always like the most fun to record, I think.
Super excited about it.
Also, if you guys are listening, send in your 5 most anticipated movies for the rest of the year. Let's see what you got.
Yeah, maybe you'll remind us of a movie we weren't thinking about.
Absolutely.
Which no doubt that would happen at some point, so it'll help.
All right.
Yeah, and of course, don't forget to like us and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Casual Cinecast, and review us on iTunes and subscribe to us in whatever podcast app you like to listen to.
Yeah, please subscribe.
Thanks so much for listening, guys. We'll see you next time.
All right, bye-bye.
See you later.